So it's a beautiful mixture of frum and non-frum. That's the really beautiful.
You're here what? They're fundraising? What are they here for?
For the drone and for the binoculars.
Yeah.
That changed the war.
Yeah.
You realize now you don't hear people die because of this.
But they also changed their tax.
No one they die more, unfortunately, crossfire.
Today, excavating. No. So they routed it out, and so yeah, but they didn't. It's not fixed. It's temporary usage.
He had the
Sewage.
All right.
crappy situation.
All right.
The right page. You came for this.
Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Kuf Gimel.
Oh, right.
Okay, we got sealed food.
It's not.
Sure. Thank you. All right. Today's Daf Kuf Gimel. The set is called Matzia. So we got to the top. So we're gonna get to the at the Shem. We'll get to the Mishnah on the bottom of Amud Beis. We'll get there today. We're still trying to figure out our Shavuos plans. I'll be in touch with Levi. So let's see what's going on. So where do we leave off? I think 4 lines from the top. So and away we go. Amar Rava, Amar Rav Nachman. A person goes ahead and he rents a house to his friend. There's a star that says renting it to him for 10 years. Because of the shtara, right, as I just said, and he wrote from a star. The Amar Le, Nakitas Chamesh Shanim. The guy says, okay, you've already been there 5 years. You only have 5 years left. Now, the document was not dated, right? That he's renting out for 10 years. So we don't know when the 10 years started. So the owner is saying, you got 5 more years. Mehemen, he is believed. The owner is believed because we know that the house is his, and therefore the other guy, if he has more than 5 years, he should go ahead and be able to prove it. So but according to your svara, so let's say I lent someone $100, right? And it says in a star, so the guy says, okay, I already paid you half. I only have another half. So the guy is believed. So it doesn't make sense. I'm holding a document that says Eddie owes me $100. So Eddie says, I already paid you 50 for it. So I only owe you another 50. So in that case, do we believe Eddie? Right? So we don't, right? We don't have we don't believe Eddie, and therefore, so why should we believe the landlord in this case who's renting out the house? How can you compare the two? Over there, in the case of the star, the reason why the star is there is the star is there for the purposes of collection. And therefore, if indeed that Eddie would have paid something,
Wait,
right?
With paid portion, don't you update the stuff?
So if he would have paid, he would have wrote on the star that says, I owe $100, I only owe $50 because I paid $50 today. Or Eddie would have said, okay, I got $50 now. I'll give you $50. Give me a receipt for this $50. So at least Eddie has proof. But over here, the reason why the star is there is not for the collection. The reason is because if all of a sudden after 10 years Eddie says, oh, I've been here for 10 years, it's my house. What are you talking about, Yoel? He says, well, it's mine. I rented it to you. So prove it to be rented to me. I bought it from you. And that's why I've been living here for 10 years. So you have a chazaka. So that's the reason I have the document. It's not for the purposes of collection. It's for the purposes of to show that I still own the land or the house. So therefore, in this case, the star is not something that if I'm responsible to mark down every year that he's lived there. Rather, the star is for that, and therefore I know the house is mine. And therefore, you only have 5 years left. Prove to me otherwise. And Amarav Nachman Shalom Betuvo. If a person goes ahead and says, I want to use this item Betuvo, right, for its for its best usage, that means Liyailo. That means he can borrow it indefinitely, right? As long as I need it. In other words, as long as it's in good working condition, I'm borrowing it. And Amarav Shmuel says, Ramari, the son of the daughter of Shmuel, so I guess the grandson of Shmuel, but he has to go ahead and make a kinyan from him in order to go ahead and be able to use it for this law. And Amarav Rashi, Mahader Le Kasian. Let's say he goes ahead, we're on Kuf Gimel, smack in the middle of the page. If he's, and indeed this case, he's borrowing indefinitely. So, but let's say it does get damaged, or basically he uses up its full life. then he has to go ahead and return whatever materials or handle is left when he's done. Person says, hey, give me this shovel or the toe to go ahead and use it for this orchard. So he can only use it for that orchard. Once he's done with that orchard, he can't use it for other purposes. If he just says "Kai baru a hoe" or "pardisa" for an orchard, Rafik le call pardisa the boy. He can go ahead and use it for any orchard he wants. Pardise, if he goes ahead and says orchards, then Rafik Vazel call pardise the isa. He can go ahead and use it for all the orchards that he owns. So it depends when he's borrowing it, how he says it in terms of what his permitted usage is. So in this case, where you can allowed to go ahead and use it for multiple orchards, i.e., it's going to be for a very long time. If it does get damaged, he has to go ahead and return the handle or whatever if it breaks off. And Papa, hi man, the Chavre, Ushlan hi Gargusa. Guy says, hey, lend me this well. The nafla, then the well, collapses or breaks. Low bunny, he can't go ahead and rebuild it because it was supposed to be specifically this well and not a replacement well. Gargusa, he says, can I borrow you from you a well? The nafla and that falls apart. So bunny, he can go ahead and go ahead and build another well and use it from that guy's property. And big Gargusa, if I say, can I borrow from you, wells? Right, so he can go ahead and basically dig until he finds a really good well, and then use that one. He has to go ahead and make a kinyan on him. In other words, to show that he's allowed to use it, for the long period of time. Fine. Naya Mishnah. Last Mishnah. A person goes ahead and rents a house to his friend. He's a lease v'nafal and it collapses. Chayiv lohami lo bias. He has to go ahead and replace from the house because that was the deal for a year. I will provide housing for you in this house. We'll soon through the situation.
Has to immediately fix it.
Right, replace him a house. Hayakat, and if it was small, if it was a small house, so he can't go ahead and build a bigger house unless both parties agree. Or gadol, if it's a big house, lo yasin and katan, he can't go ahead and make a smaller house. Or echad, if it was a single unit, lo yasa shnayim, you can't go ahead and make a duplex or whatever. Or shnayim, if it's 2 units, lo yasin echad, you should go make what? Lo yivchais min achaloinus. Also, in his replacement house, you should not go ahead and give it less windows. Lo yisikalim, and not add more windows. Maybe people like a certain amount of privacy. Ella midas shneim, only with the consent of both of them.
He can't do any capital.
Well, he's rebuilding the house. He's rebuilding the house, so he can't. When he rebuilds the house, it should be similar to the house that collapsed.
But you can't build it, but you can't change the terms. You can't, right? I mean, you can't change his rent. You can build a bigger house. It's up to you.
Well, no, you can build a bigger house, but at the same price.
Right,
yeah.
sorry,
But in other words, and let's say he wanted to build it bigger for afterwards, so the other guy can say, I don't want a bigger house. I want a smaller house. I don't want to pay, for all this upkeep or whatever. So the Gemara says, hey, Kidama, what is the exact situation? I'm going to rent from you this specific house. So Nafil Azalik. I understand. So if it falls, so you want to rent this house. This house is no longer here. So therefore, you don't get a house. So if he says, I want to rent for you a house, then then he just says a house. He doesn't say this specific house. So therefore, I can provide you any type of housing, whether it's bigger or smaller. Why can't he make it 2? Or why can't he make it bigger? Why doesn't he use consent? The house I'm going to go ahead and rent to you is going to be, this and this specific dimensions. So Gemara says, what's the chiddush here? Of course, he says 1,200 feet. I'm going to give you 1,200 square feet, not more, not less. He says, bayis kazeh. He points to the house and he says, I'm going to rent you a house like this. And the Gemara says, Vekanti, still, my lebeim, what's the chiddush here? He says, a house like this, it should be identical to that. The Gemara says, look, let's speak of the koi aguta denaro. Maybe it's like on the riverbank. He's got river views, and Malas just said, "My kazeh." What would he say when he said, "I'm going to rent you a house like this"? It just means the koya good dinar. It just means maybe I'll go ahead and rent you a house on a riverbank. Doesn't necessarily mean a house with these dimensions. Kamash malan, a house kazeh means also the dimensions. I can't go ahead and change the dimensions, whether smaller or bigger, unless with the consent of both parties. So hajnalach hashaya. Mazel tov, mazel tov. All right.
And he is what is the last line again?
So now we got to the next parent. So next Mishnah. Naya Perik,
What was the last?
Naya Masechta.
What was about
He says, if I rent you a house like this, it has to be the same dimensions. That's what he means. It's refers to dimensions, not just location. Hamakabel Sadam Echaver, a person who goes ahead is Makabel, a field from his friend. So he's doing it from a kabbalanus, right? Kabbalanus we saw is like a sharecropper, certain amount. I'll take a half and I'll work the field. So there's certain things that are provided, right? Provided by the landlord, and certain things are provided by the guy who's going to work the sharecropper, right? The sharecropper does all the work, and basically the landowner provides the field, and they sort of have a split as to how they divvy up the crops. So Malcolm Shano Yiksor, if the minhag of the place is to go ahead and harvest it. Now Katsira is basically using a sickle, cutting it down, leaving the stubble in the ground. So if the minhag of the place is to do that, then Yiksor, then he could do that. La'akor, if the minhag is to uproot, as by harvesting they uproot it, not just cut it, but uproot it, then Yakor, then that's how the sharecropper should do it. And lichroi shacharav, let's say also the minhag is after you harvest it to go ahead and plow it after, then he should go ahead and plow it after. Hakol kaminhag Medina. Everything is like the minhag of the locale. Just like they go ahead and divide the grains, so too they go ahead and they divide the straw and I guess the larger straw, the kash, also the other straw, the one that's what's it called? That's used to feed the animals. So those different types of straw, those are byproducts. Those are byproducts, and therefore one can go ahead and either use it for their own animals. So therefore, that's also, since it's a byproduct, they can go ahead. I guess use it. Cash is normally used as animal feed, so they can go ahead and they also have to divvy that up. Let's say it was a third, 2/3, or half and half, and they also divided that.
Right.
Just like they go ahead and say it's a vineyard, they divide the wine. So too with the shoots and right, and also the I guess the different branches, and also the kanim, right, the poles, the stakes that are used to hold up the vines. And also both of them are responsible to provide the poles.
Right.
the
landlord too. Yes,
and
right.
the renter?
Correct. Right. Well, soon see, because that was the minhag Malcolm. We'll soon see why. So that's it.
So that's why they're dividing it up, all the different.
Right. So they divide multiple things. It's not just the grains, but even other things that pertain to the what's it called, to the crop. Now,
Okay, I didn't say that this guy was a sharecropper.
no, he is kablanus.
Oh,
I'm a kabel. So he's referring to an oris.
okay.
Right. Hamakabel. It's also lemechza. Right, as Rashi says. Right. It's basically another word for arisus, sharecropping.
Oh, okay.
All right. Zok the Gemara, top line. Or second line. So Tana Malkum Shinagalik. So in Rashai Akor, Akor in Rashai Lik. So as we said over there, it says the place where there minhag is to go ahead and to harvest and cut it with a sickle or the like. You can't go ahead and uproot it, and you can't uproot it in the Yishar Litzar. Why? Ushnei Ma'akvin says that each one can stop the other one to do it. In other words, the Nega Malkum is to go ahead and uproot it. So the landowner can stop the worker from doing that, or vice versa. Why? Litzar in Rashalak, or the reason why each one, there's an aspect of each one that each one might like, and therefore they can prevent the other one. So if it's Litzar in Rashalak, or if it's just to cut it, or it's a high Omar Beina, the Tavni Li Ari. I like the fact that you go ahead and cut it with a sickle, because I like the fact that you leave all the stubble in my field, and therefore that helps it, grow for next year. So you can't go ahead and uproot it. I want you to cut it. High Omar Li right? So he says, and the other one will say, Lamatzina, in other words, I don't want to go ahead and you want me to go ahead and do extra work. I don't want to go uproot it. I only want to cut it and not uproot it. Therefore, you can't force me to uproot it, because that's the minhag. And la'akor, if the minhag goes to uproot it, then Rashalik, so you can't go ahead and just cut it. So hayam arba'ina the tinakirari, the landlord would say, hey, I want it to be oiker, uprooted, so therefore my land will be clean, and therefore just like everybody else. Hayam arba'ina tivna, no. You want uproot it, but I want to go ahead and cut it because I want tivna I want to uproot it to be able to go ahead and keep the straw. And both can prevent one another. So Lamali, why do you have to say that? So Ma Tam Kamar, what's the reason why each one can stop the other one from not doing the minhag Medina? So Ma Tam Liktor and Rashai Lakor, Lakor and Rashai Liktor. What's the reason why if the minhag is to cut it, you can't uproot it, or if the minhag is to uproot it, you can't go ahead and cut it? Because Mishum the Shnei Ma'akvin Zedzeh, because each of them have the ability to ma'akiv one another, and therefore they have to stick to the minhag hamakom. And then we say if the minhag was to lichosh, to go ahead and plow afterwards, then he has to plow afterwards. So it says pshita. It's obvious that that's the minhag hamakom, and he's becoming a sharecropper. That's what they do. The one says no, like tzricha, but also delay menachish. Maybe it's an area where they don't go ahead and weed. The azal you v'nachish, and he went ahead and he weeded it while it was while he's harvesting. The reason why I weeded it is in order that I don't have to go ahead and plow it afterwards. So Kamash Malan, that if he was going to go ahead and do the extra weeding, he had to say, hey, I'm going to go ahead and weed it in order that I don't have to go ahead and plow it afterwards. And if the landowner says, okay, that works for me, then he can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, even if he weeds it, he has to stick to the minhag makom because it wasn't stipulated. Right. And kol minhag Medina, everything's like the minhag Medina. So kol asuyi might comes to include what? So asuyi ha to go ahead and include this. The Tanur Rabbanan makom shnagu laskir ilanais agabe karka maskir. Now let's say now the guy is I'm going to go ahead and sharecrop your land. So the land is basically primarily weeds. And there's some apple trees there, right? Apple trees also in the land. So and I'm leasing the whole land. And therefore, the question is, do I go ahead and is my sharecropping included with also the trees? In other words, I'll work the trees and I'll pluck the trees. And therefore, I'll get, half of the trees, right? And therefore, I can do that. Or maybe the minhag is just, even if I did the land, it's only the crops and not the trees. So let's explain. So if the minhag is to go ahead and rent out also the trees with the crops, then he rents it out. However, a place where it's not knowing to go ahead and do it, then a maskirin. So maskirin, I understand. So if the minhag is to go ahead and that's included in it, so of course, what's the chiddush? It was a sheet, that's obvious. So, it says like tzrika the kuliyama yavi betilsa. Everyone else gives. Let's say the sharecropper only takes a third. The azal ihu v'yave berivia. And he says, you know what? I'll only take a quarter. Mojiv said, the Amar le hi the Davatzili adai to deliving al chabilanos. So maybe say like this. The reason why I'm giving you more, right? I'm only taking let's say the landowner says I'm only taking a quarter of the percent. I'm only taking 25%, and only take 33%, is because I don't want you to go ahead and take for the trees. So Kamash Malan, so even though he's going to give him a better portion of the crops, and he says I will only do it because I wanted to, I want all the fruits. He can't do that unless he goes ahead and explains it. And Malcolm Shinago Shalom Haskir Ein Maskirin. So of course it's Pshita. So it's also the places it was not to go ahead and rent out the trees are not included. So the trees are not included. So it's obvious. Everyone goes ahead and they work for 25%. The Azal Ihu, the Kiba Batilsa, and he says, you know what? He's doing it for a third. I gave you a third. Some other time, what would you say? The reason why it's a third is that I also want a percentage of the trees. He should have gone ahead and stipulated that beforehand, and he can't just go ahead and give a higher percentage because he wants to go ahead against the minhag makom. He has to stick to the minhag makom.
What do you first agree to?
Right, it has to be what they agree to. Just like they divide the grains, right? So too they also divide the straw, the processed straw, and the whole straw. So Amar Rav Yosef bevavel nagu delo yavi tivna larisa. So the minhag was in Bavel not to go ahead and give the the straw to the sharecropper. So Gemara says Lamai nafkamina. If the person does go ahead and give the straw, he can't say, well, I gave you straw, therefore give me a higher percentage. It means I right? It's only he's being generous, and therefore Lamaisa, it doesn't really change the deal unless anything else was stipulated. And Amar Rav Yosef said, Rav Yosef, Buchra, the Tafta, the Arkafta. So around the field that he would go ahead and work, so they would go ahead and basically dig up around there and put a mound around there, sort of like a mound of earth around the area that was being grown. So each one of these are different levels. So Bruchra is like the first. The top is the second level. Kafta is the top level. All those is the kani, and also the chazira, the balabais, and also the boards that were used and the poles around it. So those are all provided by the landowner. The chizra gufe darise, but the thorns itself, in other words, he just puts up the fence. But the other guy, the guy who's working, he puts up the thorns. He puts up the rise. Why called them? So what's the rule? Koliker balma de balabais. Anything that's just secure the land, you put up the general fence, that goes on the landowner. However, in Tirusa, you say darisa, but over here, to make sure no one comes in addition to the fence, thorns or other types of security, that is on the sharecropper because that's for his purposes, makes his life easier. So the hoe and the shovel, the davla of a zarnuka, and also the pail, and the also a bottle to like the leather bottle or like type of canteen for water. The balabais, that is provided. These are things that are provided by the landowner. And a rise avid beyore. But however, the sharecropper, he's in charge of going ahead and making the ditches. Just like they go ahead and divide the wine, so too they go ahead and divide the different vines, the shoots, and also the kanim, right? The branches that come off. So kanim avidas. So what do you mean the kanim? So it says we're referring to kanim b'chulakim, right? These are the ones, the canes, shebehed ma'amidas and kafanim, the canes that they go ahead and they hang the vines upon. So those things are split between the sharecropper and the landowner. Why is that? So why did they say both of them provided? So it says
We're talking about the trellises that the vines.
Yeah, that they hang on, right? So it says, and they split those. So what's the reason why they split them after? What's the matam? Why does it go ahead and divide it? It's because because both of them provide the kanim,
Right.
and since both of them provide it, therefore both of them goes ahead and also divides it afterwards. All right, we'll stop here at the Mishnah. The tomorrow, Bez Hashem, we'll go ahead and continue from here, and then we'll have it planned shortly for Shavuos.